Hi, friends. This is Andy Paul, host of the Sales Enablement Podcast. We love Stu Heinecke because of the unique perspective he brings to sales prospecting. Not only is Stu a best selling author, a Hall of Fame nominated marketeer, and a sales prospecting expert, he is one of the famed Wall Street Journal cartoonists. And in this session, Stu will share some of his most effective tips that he uses to get prospects' attention and keep it. Now, let's get into it.
Hey, well, thank you, Andy. What an honor to be part of this event. It's an amazing event, and also to be, just collaborating with one of my good friends, kind of one of my heroes of selling. That's you, Andy. So, hey, thank you so much. Well, look, I'm going to be talking about the subject of getting meetings, and you think about it. One meeting is sort of a thing that I'm fond of saying in ads anyway, that one meeting can really change everything. And if you think about it, every big development that happens in our lives happens because really because we got a meeting with someone. We connected with the right person at the right time, and every advancement that happens in our life happens because of those connections. We can't do it without these connections happening. If you think about it all throughout your life, you'll see that that's true. So we're going to be talking about how to get those meetings. If you're going to be reaching out to people who can change the scale of everything, well, those people are generally kind of hard to reach. I'm sure you've experienced it. Everyone does. And so this is all about, well, how do you get these meetings? These meetings that are really tough to get. Um, I wrote a couple of books about this. You see them on the wall, but I'll hold them up. Here's How to Get a Meeting with Anyone. This one came out in 2016. And then there's a new one, Get the Meeting. Oops, there it is, which is a companion to the first. They're meant to be read together, used together. They have 20, well, the first one has 20 categories of contact marketing campaign types. You might be interested in knowing what contact marketing is because it's not a commonly used term yet. But when I was interviewing all the thought leaders, all the sales thought leaders about what they were doing to break through, to get through to these people that are of just great importance to their careers and to their businesses, they shared with me a lot of stories. There were 20 categories of contact marketing campaign types that appeared in this book in How to Get a Meeting with Anyone. But I kept asking, this thing we're doing, what is it called? And no one had a name for it. So I had to call it something. So I called it contact marketing in the book. And contact marketing is a really interesting thing because, if you think about these one-on-one campaigns that are used to reach out and break through to the people that are just of ultra importance to us, there's a lot of audacity that features into these campaigns, a lot of really creative things that people do to break through. I'll show you a few examples in just a moment. And the thing that's really interesting is that as a form of marketing, oh my God, this just is off the charts. The kinds of response that this generates they're just amazing. The record for response so far is 300%. How can you get 300% response rate to anything? Well, actually the answer to that is that people are so thrilled by these things. They're so taken by these things that they want to share them. They want to show them around. And that evangelism that these inspire sometimes causes people to become, well, more people than are part of the campaign to become aware of it and to respond. Isn't that amazing? No other form of marketing works like that. And then here's a real shocker. The ROI on contact marketing campaigns is typically in the, let's say, tens to hundreds of thousands of percent. That's a big response for any marketing campaign. But the record for an ROI figure for contact marketing is 69,500,000%. That's a really difficult number to just wrap your head around. But wrap your head around this even further. There are other forms of marketing. I started in direct marketing, actually, where they used to say that, for one thing, 100% response rates were absolutely impossible. And what they used to say about response was that if you get a 1% response, you're doing really well. And to a direct mail campaign, if you get a 1% response, well, that's kind of a typical number. Well, actually, they used to say that, but there is no such number. There is no typical response rate. But if we used a 1% response rate for a moment, if we said that's the benchmark for direct marketing, yeah, and then we look at, let's say, digital marketing, where click-through rates can be thousands of a percent. To have a form of marketing that goes, let's say now we're more typically that it goes, let's say from 10% to really to 100%. That's a remarkable form of marketing, and that's what contact marketing is. So contact marketing is a really, really important, important kind of, I would call it a new development in marketing and sales, but it's really not. It's not new at all. Actually, the oldest form of, or not form, but instance of contact marketing that I've found in my research actually involved Leonardo da Vinci. So that was about, I don't know, 500 years ago, something like that. I don't remember the date that he did this, but he was hired by the Count of Milan. Oh, sorry, no, not by the Count. He was hired by one of the Medici family members to create a gift that he would use to reach out and meet the Count of Milan. It worked actually, and actually, Leonardo became lifelong, from that point on, lifelong friends with the Count of Milan himself, as the creator of the campaign. But he was the first. He's the first instance of a contact marketing campaign being created by to create contact with someone. And it was Leonardo da Vinci. That's pretty cool. I think that's, I mean, if you have to be involved with a form of marketing at all, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're going to be involved with any form of marketing, get involved with a form that Leonardo da Vinci probably, I don't know, did he invent that too? It seems like it. There's probably other examples and earlier examples of people getting gifts or using gifts to break through. But this just is, it's an unusually effective method for breaking through. And there are really all kinds of stories about this. I'm going to start with my own story. Years ago, I should explain, I wrote these two books, but I'm also, and I'm a marketer, but I'm also a cartoonist. And I've been a cartoonist my whole career. I now cartoon for the Wall Street Journal. I mean, I'm one of many, but I'm one of the Wall Street Journal cartoonists. So I do it professionally, have done it for a very, very, very long time. And when I first started my career, I had graduated, left USC, studied marketing, and I was also really, really deeply passionate about cartoons and cartooning. I was getting published in the papers in LA, and I thought, well, this is really pretty cool. Now, here's the thing. I was a member of the Cartoonist Guild, and group of cartoonists, or an association of cartoonists all around the world. And they sent they were always sending us information, but one day I received this package from them, and it was a reprint of an article from Folio magazine. Now, Folio is the magazine for people who publish magazines. And it was saying that you really ought to consider putting cartoons into your articles and stories, just really into your publications, because readership surveys are saying they are the best read and best remembered part of anything they're in editorially. Think about that for a moment. Isn't that just a stunning thing to say? I mean, everything in magazines and newspapers is meant to get your attention and be memorable. I mean, really, it's created by some of the top creative minds in the world, and yet it's the cartoons, just those simple drawings with captions. Actually, they're not quite so simple. They're deceptively simple, but that simple drawing and caption, that combination is what draws everybody in. And from that point on, they become the best read and remembered parts of the magazines and newspapers. I'm going to cough for just a moment, pardon me. And so, I knew that if they had that kind of power over readers, that they would be really powerful in marketing campaigns as well. If they're the best read and remembered part of anything they're in editorially, well, then what about the stack of mail that people were getting every day? And they used to get a lot more mail than we do now. But what about that big stack of mail? Wouldn't a cartoon cause that one mailing to stand out in the same way? Well, I had to know. And so I got my first two assignments, one for Rolling Stone, the other one for Bon Appetit. I created test campaigns for them. It went up against their control group. Now, I mean, their control, and let me explain what a control is really quickly for those who aren't marketers. In statistics, we always test against a control group. And in direct marketing, you test against Well, the control, which is the constant, that is the most effective thing they've ever put in the mail for that particular mission. So if you tie the control, you've just tied the record for response. That's amazing, an amazing feat because they were testing all the time against these controls. If you beat the control, you just set the new record. That's even better. That's amazing. Well, my first two assignments, my first two test campaigns, the first two mailings that I created went out against the controls, and they both beat the controls for Rolling Stone and Bon Appetit. It was like a rookie walking onto the baseball field, Major League Baseball field, and hitting two Grand Slam home runs. That was incredible. Well, I knew then that that was my entree into the rest of the publishing industry, and that was my goal all along. I wanted to create direct mail campaigns for the big magazine publishers, Time Inc. and Time Warner, Condé Nast, the Wall Street Journal, Harvard's Harvard Business Review, Forbes, et cetera. I wanted to create for those companies, for those publishers. And so, beating the controls for those first two was my entree. I knew it. So I wanted to reach out. Now, here was my situation. I needed to reach about 24 VPs and directors of circulation or consumer marketing at these big Manhattan-based publishing houses. I knew it wasn't going to be easy. I mean, they're important people and they're well insulated. So I knew I had to do something extraordinary to get their attention. And so what I did was I put together a little campaign. It consisted of an 8x10 print. I'm motioning my hands. 8x10, that's kind of like what it is. Pardon me. An 8x10 print of a cartoon about each recipient. So it was personalized. Each caption had a data insertion point where I dropped in their first and last name. And I sent that to them with a letter that just said, hey, this is the device I just used to beat the controls for Rolling Stone and Bon Appetit. And they, we should put this to the test for your titles. And so sent that out. Now, by the way, I didn't know what to call this little campaign. So I had to call it something. So I began calling it a contact campaign. And so that contact campaign went out to 24 people. And if we were sitting here live, I'd ask you, well, what do you think I got for a response? I mean, I love doing that when I'm talking to live groups because they'll guess, I don't know, I mentioned the 1% response rate to direct mail. They might guess 1%. They might get really wild and guess 10%. Well, I got through to all of them. Actually, all of them responded. So that's 100% response rate to my contact campaign. But it went further than that because they all agreed to meet. So I met with all of them. And eventually they all became clients. So that was 100% response rate to the campaign, 100% conversion on the back end of that campaign. And they all became clients. That's just amazing. So I don't know of any other form of marketing that makes that happen. And that was my first entree to contact marketing. You look at it for a moment. I went out to a very small audience, and I used something that was very compelling. It was that cartoonism is a compelling element, and the letter saying that I just beat the controls for Rolling Stone and Bon Appetit also was very compelling. The whole thing was compelling, but I went out to just 24 people. I spent about $100 and it launched my business. It was worth millions of dollars to me. That one campaign. That's amazing. And that's what contact marketing really is. And so I'm going to pull this over for a moment. I'm going to give you a definition of contact marketing. So what it is a fusion of marketing and selling in which often audacious forms of marketing are used to support specific high-level sales approaches to critically important accounts and prospects, often resulting in extraordinarily high levels of response, ROI, and explosive growth of the enterprise. Yeah, that's what it is. Well, that's what it is, but I guess I should also explain really what it is kind of through example. People they're sending gifts, they're sending visual metaphors. Let me show you a couple of these things. This is not a real lemon. Listen to this. Can you hear that? It's fake. It's a fake food thing. There's a whole industry of fake food that produces fake food items for delis and restaurants to put them on display, and supermarkets to put them on display. If you're seeing meals or sample sandwiches, something like that on the, in the case on display to show what they serve, it's probably fake and you won't know it. It's that real. I mean, that realistic. So we've had a blast using a lot of fake food items. My favorite are spills. Look at that. That's pretty cool. Now, that cup was custom made. That's one of my coaching clients, and that's his contact information on this cup. So this is a drop by. We use it as a drop by device. So if he's dropping off, if he's dropping by one of his clients or prospects offices, he can just stop and talk to the receptionist and say, "Hi, my name is Bruce. I wonder if Bob is available." And Bob's never available, right? I mean, at least that's the first thing you hear from the receptionist. So he'll leave that. He'll just say, "Well, good. I just want to leave this behind. This is for Bob." And the receptionist will, and it might have a Starbucks card in there, and a note saying, "Hey, Bob, sorry we missed each other, but I want to talk to you. Maybe over a cup of coffee. Maybe we can have a cup of coffee, or, over the phone, something like that." Um, and the receptionist will look at that and they'll play with it. This thing's so cool. Then, you know what? Hang on a second. Let me see if he's available. That's a flip moment. And that's what contact marketing campaigns do. They create flip moments. So it goes from who is this to wow, who is this? Man, we got to meet. I love the way you think. That's the effect we're after. And so yeah, I mean so these guys are pretty cool. And in Get the Meeting, my most recent book, I also talked about pocket campaigns, and these are campaigns that you launch from your pocket instead of a business card. They could look like that. That's Kevin Mitnick's actual business card, but that's a lockpick set. It's an involvement or engagement device. If you go to his website, you can see a video of someone actually taking these tools out. You twist them off, and picking a lock. Well, that's a pocket campaign too, because he's able to set a tracking pixel on that page, and because his card is such a compelling piece. I'm looking at it now, but because it's such a compelling little card, and you get to play with it, and you could actually pick a lock, or you could just go to his website and to that page to watch the video. Well, boom, he's already now put you into a digital persistence campaign. He can retarget you or remarket to you. Wherever you go on the web now, you'll start seeing his ads because you got his card and you went to that site and viewed the video. So those are, pardon me, those are pocket campaigns. Here's another one. This one's pretty cool. This is called a Pocket Ninja, and it's a multi-tool that you put in your pocket. You could keep it in your wallet, I guess. It's the size and thickness of a credit card, but you can see it has cutouts. So it's a wrench, it's a bottle opener, a letter opener, a box opener, all these things, but those aren't labeled. So if you go to the back of the card, then you see where the tool directions are. So there it is again, another video on a web page where pixels are set, and that initiates a retargeting ad campaign, which is really the digital persistence campaign. And it's a very effective thing to pull out of your pocket and hand out instead of a card that's like someone's going to throw into a box or even throw away. So those are some pretty cool examples. But I want to tell you a couple of really interesting stories of how contact marketing has been used. One of them, it's one of my favorite stories. It's Dan Waldschmidt's story, and I don't know if you know Dan. Of course, I wouldn't know that, but Dan writes the blog Edgy Conversations. It's a sales blog, one of the top ranked sales blogs. But what he does for a living is he's a turnaround specialist. And so what he does is, he's got this great process for reaching out to CEOs of companies that are in trouble. You can't buy a list of those things. So instead, his process is this. He combs the business news every morning to look for stories of missed earnings estimates. And when he finds one, he has a beautiful sword made up. And that sword, it has the CEO's name engraved. I mean, you can see the slide right now, and you don't see a CEO's name, but this is an example of it. But he has the CEO's name engraved on the sword, the blade, and one of his favorite inscriptions: "If you're not all in, you're not in at all." Kind of an inspirational quote to put on that sword. And he sends it in this beautiful wooden box, felt-lined wooden box with a handwritten note. Funny, because handwritten notes factor into these very, very successful campaigns quite often. So the handwritten note says, let's say it's Bob again. So, "Dear Bob, listen, I know business is war, and I noticed you lost a battle recently. I just want to let you know, if you ever need a few extra hands in battle, we've got your back." What a cool message. And it's done in handwriting. There's no logo on it. There's none of that, none of the trappings that we normally associate with branding. So you might say there's no branding happening with this piece, but actually there's huge branding happening. The sword is a visual metaphor for the power and the passion and the just the winning attitude that Dan is going to bring to any any assignment that you were to give him as your turnaround coach. Um, and and just the handwritten note, he took the time to have this sword made up and engraved with your name, but also to sit down and write this note to you. This is really very different from any other form of communication that CEO is going to get. You know what they're going to get. They're going to get all these long form, long copy emails. That never get through. Nobody cares about those things, or they might connect with someone on LinkedIn and then get pitched immediately. Hey, I heard you need a turnaround coach. None of those things are going to work. Dan's does work. And by the way, that campaign pulls 100% response rate for Dan. That's pretty amazing. I mean, that's not supposed to happen, right? I mean, that's what the experts used to say. It's not even supposed to happen, but it does happen with contact marketing. I'm going to share one other story with you. There's this really interesting story of a startup that this dentist had created a tongue scraper. And you scrape your tongue and it gives you better breath than you have right now. And so he wanted to make it the biggest best-selling tongue scraper in the world. And so what he did was he got together with some young guys from, I guess, I don't know, Brigham Young. It was in Salt Lake City, so it was one of the colleges. And he had these young guys start to just to work with them on marketing. How am I going to get this out? And they said, well, look, the way you're going to do this is you're going to run ads, so videos on YouTube, and we're going to sell it directly. And these guys they were very successful. In fact, in the first year of operation, they sold $1 million worth of these tongue scrapers. That's a great result. That's fantastic. But it gets a lot better because, look, here's the thing. It's a retail item, and they figured, well, okay, that's great. But if you really want to get into the big leagues, I suppose one of the things you want to do is you want to break into Walmart and get into their 6,800 stores. I mean, that's a big network of stores. And if you're able to get your product into Walmart and rolled out throughout their network, that actually changes the value of the company, doesn't it? Especially if you're a startup. Well, so that's what they figured. We got to do this. And so they applied. Well, first they worked with a couple of local Walmart stores, and then they got a referral to the purchasing department. They went through the process of filling out all the forms, and they waited and waited and waited. And you can't see my hand, but I'm doing this. They waited and waited and waited, and nothing was happening. And these young guys got really impatient. So they decided to take it on themselves to put together this little, a little Facebook ad. What are they? They're about like this size. They're not very big, right? So a little Facebook ad, and they targeted it to the Bentonville, Arkansas zip code where Walmart is headquartered. And the headline said, and they showed their spokesman from the ad, and from the YouTube ads, and he's holding up the tongue scraper. And the headline says, Walmart employees have bad breath. And then underneath, but you can fix that if you stock or a brush in your stores. Well, it took about 48 hours. So they ran it on Facebook in that zip code to people of a certain age group with a certain level of education. Not bad. I mean, not bad for targeting. And they figured at some point the right buyer, the right person at Walmart is going to see it. Well, within 48 hours, they did hear from Walmart. Walmart said, and from their communications department, maybe it was from their legal department, but they were saying, hey, are you the ones behind this ad? Yeah, we are. Would you please take it down right away? I mean, please cease and desist. Well, of course, we'll take it down. And then they said, well, tell me, was this ad run nationally? No. It was run just for you. It was run just to you, just for you, to your headquarters. Really? How did you do that? And so this conversation ensued. And they said, well, you're really pretty good at digital marketing, aren't you? Well, yeah, we are. We're very good. And before they knew it, they were introduced to the dental products buyer at Walmart. Boom. That was the result they were looking for. Actually, it got better because the dental buyer asked, can you, I love this product. Can you support an order of 735,000 units? And then what are they going to say? Of course they can, right? We'll get it somehow. We'll get it done. So that's not how they said it. They said, of course. It was $1.5 million order. Now, again, remember that the prior year, their entire year, produced $1 million in sales. So this one sale, this one contact, just gave them a 50% bump over what they had done the previous year, the whole year previously. That's a big bump. But I interviewed the CEO of the company, and I asked him, okay, so what does that mean to the valuation of the company? Because if you're a startup, you sold $1 million worth of product, now all of a sudden you are rolled out throughout the Walmart network, and you just sold $1.5 million, and then when that stock runs down, you're going to sell another $1.5 million. What did that mean to the company? What did that mean to the valuation of the company? And he said, conservatively, that was a 10x multiplier. So when we got that order, when they said, can you support a 730,000 or 40,000 piece order, the value of the company went up by a factor of 10. And I figure, he said, that if we just take a multiplier of 2 against earnings, the prior year's earnings, we came into that transaction with a company that was worth $2 million. We left the phone call with a company that was worth $20 million. That's where I get that 69,500,000% ROI, because they spent $28 on that ad to get a $20 million effect. I'm sure it was even more than that downline, because there were reorders, and so what an amazing effect from a campaign that was meant to reach a single person. And that's sometimes what happens with contact marketing campaigns. It's really just focused on one person. I don't know if I have time to tell you one other story. I'll see if I can do it really quickly, because we want to get to questions as well. I just mentioned a campaign to one, and one of my favorite campaigns to one happened when a good friend of mine became a good friend anyway, Rick Bennett. He used to own an ad agency in the San Francisco Bay Area, and he had a client that owned a new startup, and the client came to him and said, I think that if I could get in front of Larry Ellison. Now, Larry he's the founder of Oracle, and the guy he wins America's Cup races, and he owns the island of Lanai in Hawaii. That guy, right? Larry. He's not very accessible, but he said, you know what? If I could get in front of Larry, I'll bet he'd want to buy my business. But the thing is, I just don't know how to get in front of Larry. Well, Rick Bennett, he's the kind of guy who says, I know how we can do that. And that's kind of the audacity that I find throughout contact marketing. So he said, look, I know what we're going to do. We're going to produce a full page. We're going to run a contact letter. We'll produce, a letter that we just introduce you and introduce your company and ask for a meeting. But I'm going to put it together as a full page ad, and we're going to run it in the Wall Street Journal. That's audacity, isn't it? And it costs $10,000 just to run the ad, just to reach one person. Well, you might think that was a high risk. It was a high risk venture, but we know the effect afterward, because here's what happened. The day that ad ran, I'm sure Larry reads the Wall Street Journal. Okay, he might have seen it. Yeah, okay. The fact is that all the people who have ready access, many of the people who have ready access to Larry also saw that, and they were seeing it all over the country, and they were calling Larry up saying, hey, Larry, did you see that? Did you see the ad in the Wall Street Journal? And so he was getting peppered with these calls from his friends all day long. So finally, he relented, and he agreed to have a meeting. Well, the owner of that startup was right. Larry was interested, and they ended up buying the company for $350 million. So they spent $10,000 and got a $350 million result. That's a 3.5 million % ROI, by the way. These are huge results, and that's what contact marketing is all about. Now, I've shown slides of some of these things and told you these stories, but I'm not really suggesting that you start sending swords or I don't know, you might want to use these, or sending lemons or something like that. What I am saying though, because you could say, if life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. You could do something. You could spin a great copy with this thing. What I'm saying to you is, I want you to draw inspiration from these stories and come up with your own audacious and crazy clever ideas for breaking through. Because when you do, the sky's the limit. You can God, if you can break through to anyone, imagine the power of that. It's like a superhuman power. So with that, let's open it up to questions.
Thanks so much, Stu. That was a really actionable, valuable session. So one question, I really like this question. It's a really good thought. One person asks, as a salesperson, if you don't have the right marketing tools, can you still get the meeting with the right prospect?
Yes. Do we have any other questions? A joke. Yeah, here's one really interesting thing. There are two forms of personalization at this point. So there's the kind of personalization that I used in those direct mail campaigns with with the publishers and the cartoons that were about each recipient. So all I needed was their first and last name to personalize that mailing, well, and their address, but all I needed was their first and last name, and I put it into a caption, into a cartoon, and that was it. I mean, that's all I needed. So deep personalization is a different thing, though. That has come about as a result of social media and being able to run profile scrapes. So you can find out a lot about someone, about what they're interested in and what they're talking about, and you can craft gifts really easily based on that. There was one really quick story of someone who discovered that their quarry was really into falconry, and so they sent a falconry glove, one of those really ornate, beautiful gloves that they use to hold the birds. And that not only got them through to someone that their company, that their entire team, everyone had tried to reach this fellow, and no one was able to do it. Pardon me, they got through to him, and they got a six-figure deal. Actually, I think they got multiple six-figure deals. So you can do that by using profile scrapes, finding out what the person is likely to respond to, and then crafting a gift based on that.
That makes a ton of sense. And I think that leads really well into the second question I wanted to make sure we got to. One person asks if you have any advice for finding these creative options, like all the great ideas that you're sharing. Like how do you find these? Where do you come across them?
Well, I mean, I gotta say, I didn't intend to give my books a plug like this, but my books are great. I did a lot of research, so there's a lot in both of those books. So in How to Get a Meeting with Anyone and Get the Meeting. But I guess the other maybe the other approach would be to if you're so there are lots of different ways to do this. And so in How to Get a Meeting with Anyone, the one that's over the shoulder right here, there are 20 categories of content marketing campaign types. And then this one is mirrored. How to Get a Meeting How to Get the Meeting, I should say, which just came out in October last year. There are 13 more, I think a dozen more types of content marketing campaigns, and lots of descriptions, lots of pictures in that one. And so you can go through that and come up with some inspiration. The thing that I think is interesting is I use my cartoons. They're an amazing contact device, but others use visual metaphors. I showed the sword a moment ago that Dan Waldschmidt uses, but there are a lot of really interesting visual metaphors. And in fact, I showed this one, the coffee cup. Those are really cool things. And I mentioned also that there's a whole industry, a fake food industry, ultra realistic fake food, and you ought to take a look at some of those things online, because there are some terrific items that might make a lot of sense. I don't know if you can see this over my shoulder. Actually, I guess this one is if you can see the tipped over or dropped ice cream cone, and it's kind of like stuff you find in a joke shop almost. But if you brought over to someone, they'd keep it on their desk for a very long time, because it's like this sort of object of fascination. The other place that I might look for interesting items might be some of the some of the museum stores, like the MoMA store, a modern, what is that? Modern Art Museum.
Museum
Museum
of
of
Modern
Modern
Art.
Art, there it is,
Yep.
of New York. That always has really interesting things like scissors. You can think, wow, how can scissors be like that, or a straw or something? And they all prompt really interesting copy opportunities. So again, I'm going to show this cup again, but that's that the spilled coffee is a metaphor, or can serve as a metaphor for things like spillage or waste or loss. What a great, if you sell insurance, wow, you want to prevent losses like this, because obviously you're not going to drink the coffee after it spills. So industries that are about loss, it's a pretty cool thing. Or even just saying, hey, let's get together over a cup of coffee. So it serves as a visual metaphor for what it is that you want to talk about. And so I would say that those are probably some great directions to go in to find devices that you can use to break through.
All super helpful. I can't resist asking one more. What are your thoughts or advice for someone who wants to think about sending cartoons via email?
Email. Well, email, I have a love-hate relationship with email. It's very crowded, and a crowded channel is not a good idea it's not a good place to try to stand out to begin with. However, email can be very, very effective. And if I'm just thinking about this, if you're reaching out to important people, they don't have a lot of time. They're not going to take a lot of time to read an email from someone they don't know. So long copy is definitely out. Don't do that. And I hear people say, how can I get my cadence? How can I get people to respond to my cadence? And I'm just thinking, think about that. Why would anyone respond to a cadence? You're not even really you're not reaching out to them at all personally. So reaching out to someone of great importance personally, I think still can have a great effect. If you're going to do that, keep the copy really, really short, like under a dozen words. I reached Mark Benioff that way. I reached Steve Forbes that way, but they're not going to sit down and read a long thing and then respond to it. It's not going to happen. So short copy makes sense. Putting a cartoon in an email, I do that. I mean, we actually do that for a few clients, and it's kind of cool because they, all of my cartoons are personalized, so each cartoon is always about the recipient. And it's kind of a cool effect. You can tell them in the subject line there's a cartoon about them. The one thing I would caution about cartoons is they are really, really difficult to get right. Think about the nature of humor. It's about truth revealed in a twist. So what is the truth you're revealing? Be careful about it, because I know that every time I have a conversation with a new client, the first thing they want to do is the first question they ask me is, hey, this is great. Can we change the caption? Or can we stick I know what they're up to. I know exactly. They may not even realize what they're asking, but what they're really asking is, how do we inject our identity and our brand into the cartoon? And the cartoon dies as a result of that. Imagine getting a poster from Miller Beer saying it's Miller time, comma, Bob, or what, I don't know who I'm talking to. But if your name is Bob and you got a poster from Miller Beer that said it's Miller time, comma, Bob, you just throw it away. It's not about you. And that's what happens to the cartoons as well. It needs to be about the recipient entirely. So you're going to want to resist that temptation to change the captions or change the gag, or in some way insert your brand or your offer into the cartoon. That's a pretty quick crash course in how to use those cartoons. And I suppose if you wanted to know more, you can reach me really easily on LinkedIn.
Stu, this has been great. Appreciate all the answers, and of course the really thoughtful session. Highly recommend everybody on the call to check out Stu's books. They got a lot more of what we just heard. And thank you all so much for attending, and look forward to seeing you on some of our other sessions today at Selling Forward. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you.